Coming up on Lawmakers, a measure that would allow the sale of alcohol on Sundays gets its first committee hearing. A measure to allow prosecutors to pursue a sentence of life without parole against murderers passes committee. And our own Gerald Bryant is honored in the House and Senate. Those stories and more are coming up next.
This is Lawmakers, your source for all the news from under the Gold Dome. Here are your anchors, Wandy Lawson and David Zelski.
Good evening, everyone. Also on tonight's program, a House committee approves legislation that would require a physician to offer an ultrasound to a woman seeking an abortion.
And House Majority Leader Jerry Keene talks about a scheduled slowdown of the General Assembly in hopes that Congress will catch up with PeachCare funding. But first, the Sunday sales bill is heard in committee. For the first time this session, a proposal to sell alcohol on Sundays gets a committee hearing. Lawmaker Sandra Parrish joins us live now with more. Sandra.
David, Senator Seth Hart brought two bills before the Senate Regulated Industries and Utilities Committee. He, along with all the proponents who spoke today, are pushing for Senate Bill 137, which, following a referendum, will allow sales of beer, wine, and liquor after noon on Sundays. Committee Chair Senator David Schaefer promised all in the packed room that each of the bills his committee was considering would get a vote in time to be considered by the full Senate. They heard today from both sides of the issue.
In most of our stores, Sunday is our largest volume day. And I'd be remiss in our efforts to serve our customers if we didn't address this effort that we're talking about today, and that is the sale of beer and wine on Sunday in a retail store.
The state of Georgia would also benefit from Sunday sales. We estimate that the increase in sales volume would translate to between $3.4 and $4.8 million in new state tax revenue from distilled spirit sales. The change would also result in an increase in revenues for the retailers between $29 and $40 million from spirit sales, and not merely spread sales out over more days.
The Sunday alcohol issue is just one more in a long line of issues pushed by a secular society aiming at stripping conservative Christianity of every vestige of what we hold sacred.
We know that alcohol not only has long-term effects on the one who drinks, but also impairs the ability to drive and can even cause traffic fatalities. It's also been reported that almost half of all traffic fatalities are in some way alcohol-related. A fourth of all emergency room admissions are alcohol-related. A third of all suicides are alcohol-related. Half of all domestic violence homicides are alcohol-related. We've heard much here today about money, but the morality and the public safety of our communities is at stake.
Now, Senate Bill 137 will now be sent to subcommittee to address any concerns with the bill and, according to Senator Schaefer, to perfect it. Reporting live, I'm Sandra Parrish for Lawmakers.
Thank you, Sandra. Another bill known as Merlot to Go received only 4 votes of no in the Senate today. Senate Bill 55, sponsored by Senator Renee Unterman, allows patrons who order a bottle of wine with their meals the right to carry that bottle home as long as it's corked. Senator Unterman explains why this measure did not pass last year.
This bill affectionately has been known as the Merlot to Go bill. And what it allows is you to be able to recork a bottle of wine in a restaurant after you have ordered a meal, and to be able to take that bottle of wine with you. It has certain parameters. They're the same as last year, and as you know, the bill did pass the House and the Senate last year and went to the governor's office, and because of an amendment that was put on it in the Senate that violated the open containers law. So we have made the proper changes. We feel like it meets the federal regulations. It won't interfere with any kind of transportation dollars.
Senate Bill 55 ended up passing by a vote of 48-4.
The Senate Judiciary Committee today passed a bill that would give prosecutors the option of seeking life without the possibility of parole in murder cases. That bill is sponsored by Judiciary Committee Chair Preston Smith. Lawmakers Jesse Freeman is live at the Capitol with more. Jesse.
And Wandy, Senate Bill 145 passed overwhelmingly this afternoon. However, some advocacy groups are opposed to the bill, saying it lowers the requirements for handing down a sentence tantamount to death, life without parole. But the debate in the committee today centered around who will make the decision about the sentence, the jury or the judge. Chairman Preston Smith says Senate Bill 145 will give prosecutors options, but it won't subvert the death penalty.
I don't really look at it as an alternative to the death penalty necessarily, as if you shouldn't seek the death penalty. It's just that Georgia's death penalty statutes require that you can only seek that if certain aggravating factors exist, which means for a large number of murders that occur in Georgia, the only available sentence is life with parole.
The bill would put discretion in a judge's hands, a move praised by prosecutors and dissed by defenders.
In the capital case, the senator is the jury. So you're saying, jury, you either death or it's one of these other two options which somebody else is going to decide.
The jury simply makes a determination of whether this case is a death penalty case after having found the aggravating circumstances, as you have pointed out. I don't really have a problem, and I think this bill does not prevent the court from charging the jury. This will happen if you don't unanimously find for the death penalty.
The bill passed unanimously and without amendment. Chairman Smith briefly entertained a motion to change the effective date of the bill at the request of the district attorneys, but ultimately passed the bill without the change. He says he may address that concern on the floor of the Senate, but first the bill must move through the Rules Committee. Reporting live, I'm Jesse Freeman for Lawmakers.
Thank you, Jesse. The House and Senate today agreed to adjourn for several weeks in March while waiting for Congress to come through with funding for the beleaguered PeachCare health insurance program. House Majority Leader Jerry Keene told reporters it's more important to pass a streamlined budget than to have a quick session.
We're confident and hopeful and more encouraged today than we were 2 weeks ago that Congress is going to act. We have statements now on record by the Chairman of Appropriations in the House. It says he's going to support the $750 million in additional fund. There's a bill in the Senate. And those were comments that we did not have 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Armed with this information, the legislature decided to begin a 2-week recess next week to give Congress time to act while the House and Senate continue to work on bills in committee.
I stand before you this morning on a simple bill that I introduced on January 31st, 2007.
Representative Nikki Randall made her daily pitch for the passage of HB 236, allowing the state to cover PeachCare until the federal government comes through. Keene doesn't think that's necessary. He does think it's time to crack down on the fraudulent use of PeachCare.
I know of people personally who are currently on the program that do not meet the qualification guidelines currently. They have called and told me that. And so our challenge, as with any program that gets as large as this, is to make sure that we manage that and manage it right.
The Department of Community Health estimates that 3% of the 270,000 children covered by PeachCare do not meet the eligibility requirements.
The Senate passed 2 budget-related bills today, one which calls for the budget to start from scratch every 4 years. The other creates a website for the public to view the state budget. Senator Cecil Staten explains the website bill, Senate Bill 29.
It is about helping the citizens of Georgia to have an easier time when they want to see what we're doing when it comes to the budget of the state of Georgia. The bill simply states that no later than July 1st, 2007, the Office of Planning and Budget will establish an internet website that shall be accessible to the general public, on which a person can view the budget, the General Appropriations Act, for each fiscal year and any amendments that are made to it. More than that, it says that it will provide the opportunity for citizens to be able to search the budget as well in order to find specific things within the bill.
Senator David Schaefer is the sponsor of the other bill that passed today, Senate Bill 12, based on a system called zero-based budgeting.
The budget is currently prepared on a continuation basis. Once a new appropriation is approved, it is rolled over into each succeeding budget under a single line item labeled only as continuation. This bill will require our budget to be periodically rebuilt from scratch, to force the executive branch to justify every dollar of spending, not just new spending.
Both Senate bills passed unanimously and now head over to the House. Senator Ross Tollison continues to push legislation that creates a statewide web for automobiles to receive ethanol-based fuel. Senator Tollison explains the grant programs involved.
This has really created a lot of interest around the state. Our grant program is going to be a grant program that is a kind of a matching along with a federal program, and I've gotten some local calls about some municipalities and areas that are going to also be raising money to do grant programs because they're very excited about what we're trying to accomplish here by giving the consumer alternative fuel retail points to purchase alternative fuels. As our state has a growing alternative fuel manufacturing base to it, we also need to participate in getting that to the consumer.
The floor vote for Senate Bill 157 is expected when the Senate reconvenes tomorrow. In other ethanol news today, Colorado-based Range Fuels announced earlier this month the building of an ethanol plant in Truitland County receives $76 million in federal funds over the next 4 years. These funds will be used to build and operate the plant, which is expected to produce over 40 million gallons of ethanol fuel every year.
Today, members of the Senate Urban Affairs Committee reviewed Senate Bill 89, which is known as the Georgia Township Act. That measure would allow the General Assembly to create townships in unincorporated areas in the state.
What I don't want this to become is a way for covenants that otherwise can exist for certain developments, residential developments, to simply be given some extra force of law that they do not currently enjoy under the real estate law. This is more than that. You would have a board of supervisors who would be elected as government officials as opposed to just the use of this form of local government for purposes of enforcing covenants on real estate. And one way of trying to address that issue would be to require some existing mixed use.
Senator David Edelman is the chairman of the Urban Affairs Committee, and he sponsors that bill. He, along with the other committee members, decided not to vote on it this afternoon.
I'm going to produce, I suppose, a substitute that includes language that addresses the issue of how the law should treat side-by-side townships or townships that abut municipalities. And then I want to address any other issue the committee has, because I really want people to feel like they've had input in the committee process and that they know what they're voting on.
Also passing the Senate today is legislation that deals with the licensure of residential and general contractors. Senator David Schaefer goes through a few details of Senate Bill 115.
The housekeeping bill for the Residential and General Contractors Licensing Board. As you'll recall, in 2004, we passed legislation creating a licensing board for general contractors and home builders. Under the term, that bill was amended again in 2005 and is scheduled to take effect this year. And this bill makes some changes to the licensing law in preparation for that board becoming active.
Senate Bill 115 passed unanimously with 3 amendments. One, an amendment from Senator Steve Thompson, which extends the time a contractor can register with the licensing board.
Passage of 15 bills in the House today marked the most rigorous voting day in that chamber this session. Representative Ron Stevens spearheaded the passage of House Bill 330, requiring the State Pharmacy Board to register and track pharmacy technicians. Stevens, who is a pharmacist, said this would stem the tide of illegal drug distribution originating in pharmacies.
What we've got now is pharmacy technicians are being hired to go into pharmacies to steal everything they can to get it out on the street. This bill will eliminate that. It allows the Board of Pharmacy to track these technicians.
House Bill 330 passed 160 to 0. It moves to the Senate. There was no opposition to the passage of a bill to extend the educational scholarships to more National Guard personnel who served overseas. House Bill 311 provides $2,000 per year to guards who served in a foreign combat zone for at least 6 months. The House also voted to remove the income cap from the state's higher education savings plan. Representative Richard Royal explains.
It simply removes a $100,000 cap on income. That Georgia is the only state that has a cap for participating in one of these type plans where you can get up to a $2,000 deduction. It removes the cap and allows grandparents to participate.
House Bill 225 passed 152 to 0. It goes to the Senate. Finally, the House agreed that notaries should be legal residents of the U.S. and Georgia, and that they should present qualified ID when applying for licenses. Representative Ed Lindsay said House Bill 274 would also address another problem.
We've had problems in Fulton County with folks going down to the county office and simply getting someone standing around to sign the document attesting to the person's good character. And this bill simply tightens it up by requiring that someone know the individual for at least a month before being able to sign such a document.
House Bill 274 passed 154-0. It moves to the Senate.
Public school students with special needs may soon receive state-funded vouchers to pay for their tuition at private schools. Lawmakers Lanny Walker has more.
Help send children with disabilities to schools their parents may not otherwise be able to afford.
I have a child who suffers from dyslexia, and this bill will help children like my son get the educational services that they need and are unable to get in a public school setting.
Opponents question the bill's constitutionality based on the doctrine of separation of church and state.
Article 1, Section 2, Paragraph 7, separation of church and state. No money shall be taken from the public treasury to aid in any church, sect, cult, or religious denomination of any sectarian organization. And yet this bill permits use of these public monies, these taxpayer monies, which I can go to jail for not paying.
Senate Bill 10 received a due-pass recommendation by House Subcommittee and now heads to a full House committee for its consideration. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Lanny Walker.
Georgia grandparents fill many roles in the lives of their grandchildren, but one of the rarest is that of a guardian. A large group of grandparents acting in this capacity held a rally today in support of a bill that would supply them with the power of attorney. Lawmakers Rick Wheatman has more.
In the water.
An increasing number of Georgia's grandparents and great-grandparents have begun providing guardianship to their grandchildren due to the parents' incapacity or inability to provide support. The Senate Bill 88, or the Care of Grandchild Act, seeks to provide power of attorney to grandparents, acting as guardians, while supplying subsidies to better take care of the grandchildren.
Last year, my kids said, "Mama, when are you going to get a new pair of tennis shoes? Honey, you got to have school shoes. This one's got to have this. This one's got to have that." Okay, you go without so that those grandchildren have, and you make sure those grandchildren have. They're not going to go without. But if we're standing up and we're taking these children and we're not letting them go into foster care, we're not letting the state have to take the responsibility of it, then we need some help making sure these kids have what they need. I'm not talking about $50 pair of pants and an Xbox 360 or whatever. We're talking about what these kids need. What these kids need to stay active so they don't turn to the games.
Georgia is one of the top 10 states with the highest percentage of grandparents raising grandchildren. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Rick Wheatman.
Well, if you've been watching Lawmakers for the past 16 years, you no doubt noticed that someone is missing. Our former co-anchor and managing editor, Gerald Bryant, who's retiring from Georgia Public Broadcasting this March. However, we at Lawmakers are not the only ones who've missed his presence here at the Capitol.
Both the House and Senate invited Gerald to the rostrum this morning to honor him for his hard work and fair professional coverage over the past 2 decades. Gerald began his morning in the Senate.
This is a fine Georgian who has meant an awful lot to each of us as senators, as well as the entire General Assembly. Gerald has covered us for many, many years.
A writer, a producer, a host, an executive producer, the list goes on and on and on, the many things that Gerald Bryant has done in his career. He has been a part of this body longer than most of us here. Devoted his career to reporting to Georgians about Georgians and all that affects the lives of Georgians. He's here with his wife, Sharon. Join me as we recognize him and welcome him back to this chamber, Gerald Bryant.
I'm kind of at a loss for words, but you have to remember I usually have a teleprompter for all this. So this is a little unusual. Senator Carter, thank you very much for this. Lieutenant Governor Cagle, 3 words I thought I'd never say. Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle, thank you very much for this. I have been around here a real long time, 16 years, most of that covering the Senate, and I so wish I were still back there behind the glass partition making fun of everything you do without your being able to hear me do that. I enjoy these 16 years more than you will ever know. I love this Capitol, I love this Senate chamber and the House chamber, and it would be easy to say that you've become cynical after many years covering politics. But for me, that's really not the case. I often tell people what's done at the Capitol is much more important than most things you'll see on the evening news, because these are things that directly affect your lives. I've had a lot of people ask me over the years who are fans of the show and know I cover politics, why does it take so long? Why are there so many meetings? It all seems so cumbersome and difficult. And my response is, it should be. You shouldn't be able to pass a law easily. There should be discussion and debate and committee meetings and hearings and floor debate and the amendment process, because all that goes to the best form of government that has ever existed in the world. And this General Assembly has always been an example of that. There were rough times in the past. I know at one time most of the Democrats thought I was a Republican. Most of the Republicans then thought I was a Democrat, all except for Representative Mitchell Kaye, who was convinced I was a communist. But I don't want to take up too much of your time, but it's an emotional time for me. This has been a big change in my life. For 16 years, for the first 3 months of the year, my wife and I did not see much of one another. She was busy running her school, and I was down here, so morning conversation pretty much consisted of morning, coffee, please, thanks, love you, bye. And that would go on for 3 months. Now, this January it changed. It became morning, coffee, please, thanks, love you, what are you still doing here? I have become amazed at the fact that my wife can do 10 things simultaneously, and she has become amazed that I can do nothing simultaneously. But it has been actually a good time for us to actually reacquaint ourselves with one another, and although I miss all this, I am enjoying retirement, and I think that the Lawmakers operation has been left in very good hands, with Ashley Wilson taking over the helm there, and David Zelski filling my spot, and Wandy Lawson, and I see Jesse Freeman back there, and so many of the people that I worked with for years, David Patterson, Clem McIntosh, and all the folks back at Lawmakers. I miss them a whole lot. I miss you guys, and just continue doing the great job for the state of Georgia that you've done for so many years. Thank you so much.
After the standing ovation in the Senate, Gerald, escorted by Representative Joe Wilkinson, made his way through a mob of fans who once again mistook him for Brad Pitt, and eventually found his way to the House chambers where Speaker Glenn Richardson had some kind words.
We in this business, we live it, eat it, breathe it, sleep it. And then there are those that report what we do. And while sometimes we don't agree with how they report it, there's one person that's been reporting what we've been doing for a long, long time here in Georgia. And at one point that I didn't miss a single edition of Lawmakers to turn on and see what Gerald Bryant was saying. And in fact, many times I turned it on when I was in the minority party so I'd know what was going on at the Capitol. And I would get my information because I always knew we were going to get good reporting. When we became in the majority, we got to watch Gerald report it, and he was always fair, and he was always balanced, and he always did a great job telling the people of the state of Georgia what was happening here. And I can't think of a more fitting tribute than we honor Gerald Bryant, who reported on us for so long at Lawmakers. Gerald, I'm going to ask you to come up here. Let's give a warm welcome to Gerald Bryant.
It was wonderful having Gerald visit this morning, and I got to say there was complete silence in both chambers. We both know that's a rarity,
very unusual.
A very special moment for all of us here.
Absolutely. Well, we also wanted to give a special thanks to Senator Joseph Carter as well as Representative Joe Wilkinson. They were the ones that spearheaded the legislation in both the House and the Senate, and we know that both of you put a lot of hard work into making this happen. We miss you, Gerald, but we know where you live, so we'll be seeing you around. Well, continuing our legislative coverage, legislation that would require a physician to offer an ultrasound to a pregnant female before providing her with an abortion passed both the House and Senate committees in the last 24 hours. Lawmakers Bridget Snapp is live at the Capitol with that story. Bridget.
In Wandy, this afternoon, the House Judiciary Non-Civil Committee passed Substitute House Bill 147 as amended, which adds the ultrasound offer requirement to the existing Women's Right to Know Act.
We're not requiring an ultrasound. It is optional. If an ultrasound is performed, then the viewing must be offered to the patient.
The bill also requires that the woman give written acknowledgement that she was offered the ultrasound and provides for disciplinary action against a physician who violates the bill. Opponents of the bill voice their concerns.
To require a medically invasive procedure or to even suggest that that medically invasive procedure is necessary for a woman to understand what she's deciding to do, that causes me great consternation.
Before passing the bill, the committee adopted Representative Lunsford's amendment to exclude a 15-minute period of reflection for a woman who views the ultrasound. Senate Bill 66, which also requires a physician to offer an ultrasound to a pregnant woman before providing her with an abortion, passed the Senate Health and Human Services Committee late last night. Both of the sonogram bills will next go to the Rules Committees. Reporting live from the Capitol, I'm Bridget Snapp for Lawmakers.
Now, Bridget, didn't a version of SB 66 that actually required the physician to perform the ultrasound pass the Senate Health and Human Services Committee earlier this month?
Yes, and Wandy, that's correct. A more restrictive version of the sonogram bill did pass the Senate committee earlier this session, but it was subsequently pulled from the Rules Committee and revisited last night. The most current version of the bill requires only that the physician offer the ultrasound and excludes the rape and incest exemption amendment that was passed earlier in the session.
All right, thanks so much, Bridget.
Today, Pickens County and Gilmer County middle schools teamed up to perform at the Capitol. Lawmakers Corey Daniels has more.
I think it's just a great experience, not only for the young people, but it allows us here at the Capitol to see what some of the music education programs are doing, and it's a tremendous experience.
Our school is all about music. We had 1/4 in this band today. We had 1/4 of our student body here. So we really are digging and pushing the relationship between music and academics at our school.
It's been a great day. The kids have learned so much here. It's not all about music education today. It's about Georgia history and getting to see actual lawmakers at work. So it's been a very rewarding day for our students at Gilmer Middle School.
It's been a joy for my students to be here. It was great to see the schools pull together. We at Gilmer Middle School, I believe that our music program pulls together in the same way. We try to at least do one thing a year with the band program, and our students bond with each other, and it really does show that music truly does bring everyone together.
Normally, Gilmer and Pickens middle schools would be competing as rivals, but today they were able to perform beautiful music together. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Corey Daniels.
And that is our broadcast for the 26th Legislative Day of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm David Zelski.
And I'm Wandy Lawson. Thanks for joining us and have a great evening.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.